So now in the parallel sessions, we're going to have the System Architects Manifesto, Designing for Transformation with Dr. Carlos Frederico Pinto. We also have a parallel session, the Breakfast Buffet Simulation with Meja. She will be presenting that also in a parallel session. And here on the main stage, we have the Lean Transformation Research with a team from the UK. So Dave, I will leave the stage with you.
Thanks, Christopher. Okay, right, let's make a start, and Luke can share the screen. Okay, thanks, Luke. Okay, so thanks for joining us. My name's Dave Brunt. I manage the activities at Lean Enterprise Academy, and I'm joined today by two of our senior Lean coaches, Peter Watkins and David Marriott. The purpose of our talk is to share research we've been conducting using the Lean Transformation Framework. And the research is in the process of being written up in a number of forms, but we thought we'd take the opportunity to share our findings to date with you today. And if you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A section and we'll try and answer them at the end. Okay, so as I'm sure many of you know, Dan Jones founded the Lean Enterprise Academy back in October 2002. And of course, Dan's the author of many Lean books, and he set LEA up as a not-for-profit organisation. So we're part of the Lean Global Network, part of LGN, which obviously comprises about 26 institutes and academies across the world. LEA's purpose is to help people become self-reliant on their Lean journey in applying Lean thinking and practice. And we provide value to customers in a number of ways. Firstly, by doing research with them on how they start, deepen or enhance their Lean journey. We provide teaching and coaching on known established subjects. So some of that's on tools and techniques, some of it on mechanisms to help leaders introduce Lean, and some of it on behaviours, on the behaviours required. And we also provide value through sharing. So we try and share as much as we can in the lowest cost way as is possible. And so there are a number of free resources on our website. We've got a YouTube channel, we share on LinkedIn. And then in person, we have an annual UK Lean Summit, an in-person event for people to learn, network and share. And we organise all of these activities around three value streams that we call learn, teach and coach and share. Finally, we've got the Lean Learning Journey platform where we're writing down in a usable form the key knowledge required to learn and implement Lean. And all of those learning processes are organised around the 5 dimensions of the Lean Transformation Framework. And it's the research around the LTF that we want to share today. So in particular, research on using the Lean Transformation Framework. The framework developed and first shared by John Shuck contends that effective change requires activities around 5 dimensions. These dimensions are around 1, the roof of that house, the value-driven purpose and the business problems to solve. Secondly, doing and improving the actual work that creates value for customers. Thirdly, developing capability to be able to do and improve the work. Fourthly, the leadership behaviour and the management system required. And then lastly, the basic thinking, mindset and assumptions that we have. And, you know, that constitutes what we do and therefore the culture of the organisation. So the LTF really is a reverse engineering of the thinking that went into the development of the TPS house. It's also a reflection on failure modes that we observe companies have when they try to implement Lean. And it's a reflection on what Master Sensei look for when visiting companies. So with those 3 inputs, the objective is not really to tell managers or companies in companies all the things that they do wrong. Instead, it's about creating a positive environment, asking questions they can reflect on to see which gaps they have. So that they can understand the things they need to consider and make plans to work on to introduce or to enhance their Lean journey more effectively. So I think it's probably emphasised that to limit one of the failure modes, we recognise that capability development is management's responsibility. We know that skill and capability can only be developed through practice. Therefore, we're teaching and coaching leaders who then teach and coach their teams. And that activity is focused on a business problem in which the management team pull tools and techniques as needed, rather than learning tools and techniques without application. You really can't learn lean through theory alone. It is a practice, and you learn that thinking through doing. Okay, so having explained the LTF very briefly, I'll now pass you over to Peter so that he can discuss the use of the LTF with leaders. Over to you, Pete.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Dave. So, as previously mentioned, any approach to applying lean thinking and practice needs to be based around the question one, the problems that you need to solve. So, when LEA partners with organizations, we get leaders to understand and think about how they currently apply lean thinking through answering the 5 questions. This gets them aligned to what lean thinking is really about and what gaps they have in applying it to solve their business problems. So we've developed an interactive learning process and materials to guide leaders through understanding and reflecting on the LTF questions. We've learned this through completing over 50 workshops now over the last 3 years in different size organizations and sectors. And we found this to be really effective. We always get positive feedback, even maybe from some of the biggest challenges. So why is using the LTF with leaders so effective then? Let's have a look at that. So essentially, when John Shuck developed the LTF in 2013, he was conducting a failure mode effect analysis in the context of applying lean thinking and practice. So by addressing each of the questions, you can avoid some typical failure modes seen when organizations start to implement. So question 1 highlights the failure if you don't consider the value-driven purpose of what you're trying to do and be clear about the problems to solve in relation to achieving that purpose. Then this can lead to a lot of organizational confusion, misalignment with everybody trying to improve everything, or real business issues not being prioritized or solved. In question 2, if you don't engage the people who are actually doing the work to analyze and make changes needed in the work to solve the problem, then it will lead to frustration or lack of progression, and more importantly, no sustainment. For question 3, if you want people to change the work to solve the problem, but they're not capable, then this will lead to huge anxiety and even fear of change. If your management system and leadership behaviors are not aligned to supporting the changes with the people at each level of your organization, then you'll get a massive contradiction in alignment and focus at each level on what really needs to get done, or a lack of progress on what is important. And if your organization current basic thinking, mindset, and assumptions are not aligned to why the change needs to happen, then you'll get huge change resistance. So what are the main common gaps that organization leaders say they have when applying lean thinking and practice? Let's have a look. So this chart captures our practical research through a high-level kind of summary. On a simple scale, with red being at starting level and green being at excelling level against all of the 5 LTF questions. And remember, this is taken from the leader's own self-reflection about the gaps based on good understanding of the LTF through our teach poster and guided learning process. We haven't got time today, unfortunately, to go through all of the questions and gaps, as you can see on the chart, but we are writing them up and publicising more about this. But by far, the biggest gap is around
Still there, Pete?
Yeah, sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, go on.
It all went off then, sorry. Okay, so where was he up to? The biggest gap, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, so the biggest gap is around question 3. And, you know, this is how do we develop the capabilities we need to do and improve the work? This is usually the tumbleweed moment in the room and during our kind of LTF sessions with the workshops. So this question really challenges some of the conventional thinking around capability development. So when we discuss it with leaders, it's almost like capability development has now just become an outsourced to the HR department or to some HR system to follow with a kind of tick box mentality and mindset. Also, a lot of the time, this ends up with leaders not owning or making visible their people's capability development plans, not reviewing at the right frequency or giving support at the right level. Also, some companies have chosen an improvement expert approach to capability development, where lean is only done by improvement experts and not taught and coached by leaders. Having this approach does not change the mindset and the organization culture to improve the business. It's only just done for the selected few. It also promotes the mindset of we wait for the expert to come and help us. And this misses out on engaging the people, really, who are actually the real experts in the job doing the work. In fact, they end up feeling improvement is done to them. Another common approach is where individuals or organizations chase black belts, status, or certification programs or awards. A lot of these approaches are not aligned around solving real business problems or aligned with the real day-to-day management system activity. So this usually ends up with forcing people to do misaligned spot improvements activities with very little sustainable benefits. Also, there is a lot of focus on either one-off training courses or even blanket training programs rather than developing people and improving the work at the same time. These are all counter to the Lean 4 level skill development process that they've mentioned previously. This is more built around progressing people's skill level to be proven to be able to do, and it should be coached directly by their leaders to embed lean practice into the organization culture. So let's have a little bit more of a deeper look around the main gaps identified in question 3 specifically, and this is what the leaders kind of focused on and said about what their own gaps are. So a lot of the time, the technical process and capabilities to do the work are defined, but improvement and leadership capabilities that are needed to solve the business problems and engage people have not really been defined, the levels and roles in the organization. Another large gap is around defining skill development levels for basic knowledge, gaining understanding or proving capability to do, and then teaching and coaching. Usually these levels have not been fully defined or understood, so the path of skill development is not clear for leaders. Also, a large percentage of leaders are not robustly owning or planning or reviewing basic capability plans for each individual, so they don't really understand their technical skill gaps or process skills or improvement skills or leadership skills. If there is some sort of plan for people, it's usually focused on career development or is buried in some internal HR system, maybe only talked about once a year. And probably the largest gap is around the lack of time and focus of leaders to develop others through on-the-job improvement, i.e. improve the work and develop the people at the same time. Another gap is when leaders develop people, but there is no clear learning process available for leaders to use to develop someone's skill. This, of course, can lead to ineffective learning and gaps in understanding. The last main gap is around how leaders judge everybody's capability to be clear to a clear criteria so they know they've achieved which skill level. Having no clear criteria can lead to all sorts of organizational mindsets and assumptions and issues around people's capabilities. So the real question is on how can we countermeasure some of these key gaps from question 3. So how are you defining and key improvement capabilities and the skill levels needed to improve the work to solve your situational problem, so you don't waste efforts to try to get leaders to develop everybody in everything? Do your leaders have skill development plans for every person and visualize them and review them as part of their management system so they can pull and prioritize on-the-job learning as required? Do your leaders have self-reflection process on their management routines and leadership style so they can allocate the right quality and quantity of giving recognition, teaching and coaching, and constructive feedback? Have you made the leaders' work of developing people easier by providing them with learning processes that they can use and develop people with correctly? And have you made the leaders' work of developing people to the skill levels a lot easier? I don't know about you, but when I was starting out on my lean journey, nobody guided me on what was the best method that was available to teach and coach lean. And actually, it was pretty tough going. I remember once at 19, as a team leader, I was learning about quality. I got a book and I locked my team in the room together and forced everybody to read it. It's probably not the best method, but hey ho, that's what I tried at the time. So what do we really mean by guided learning process? So let's have a quick look at a learning process that LEA has developed for rapid problem solving that leaders can use internally in their organization. So over to you, Dave.
Thanks, Peter. Yeah, so really what we're trying to do is provide the best quality learning processes and materials for leaders to use, and then eventually teach and coach their own team members to become truly self-reliant. So, in other words, teach them how to fish. So I'm going to show you an example of one of the learning processes that we developed around rapid problem solving. Problem solving is quite pertinent as it's usually identified as a key gap in question 1 of the LTF sessions as well. So it kind of kills 2 birds with 1 stone, and probably, arguably problem solving is the number 1 business skill to have anyway. So rapid problem solving, or RPS, is an entry-level PDCA problem-solving process around the 4 steps of concern, contain, cause, countermeasure, and confirm. And it's a great approach for tackling type 2, gap from standard, and type 3, target condition problems effectively. So the learning process that we go through in terms of the 4 skill levels. So level 1 is about acquiring some basic knowledge. Skill level 2 is then to gain some understanding of using the 4 RPS steps. Level 3 is where the individual demonstrates their capability by solving an actual problem using the method. And then level 4 is where they progress to actually go on and teach and coach others within their organization. Okay, so no, we need to go back a slide there, Luke. That's it, thank you. So in skill level 1, the learner or the delegate goes through basic knowledge of purpose, process, and people for rapid problem solving. And this can be done in 2 ways. So either the leader can do it face-to-face with their people using the top of the teach poster and also the facilitation guide to explain it to them. Or it can be done independently by the delegates via our online learning platform. It takes about 1 hour to do, so it's not too onerous, and the course is free actually online for level 1. And there is a confirmation test at the end. However, the leader must debrief and check in with the delegate to confirm their understanding. As you can see, the materials that we're using and developing are quite visual, quite simple, to try and make it easier for both parties to use. Okay. So in skill level 2, the leader guides the delegate through understanding the 4 RPS steps in terms of concern, contain, cause, countermeasure, and confirm. So again, this can be done in 2 ways. Either the leader can do it face-to-face using the bottom portion of the teach poster that we developed, and also using the teach poster facilitation guide and also the delegate workbook. Or the delegate can do it independently again online. Both approaches take about 4 hours to do. Why? Because you're explaining the thinking way behind each of the steps, and then the delegate completes a case study to confirm their understanding in applying the thinking. And the case study allows them to try out the method, but in a controlled way. In skill level 3, basically coach and evaluate the delegate through solving a real problem to confirm that they are capable. So the online material guides the leader and the learner through that coaching process. And by following this proven learning process, the leader will be able to evaluate the delegate's capability against the standard and also get a better outcome rather than try to make it up for themselves. Now, this takes about 8 to 10 weeks, depending on the problem that's selected, the availability of data, and also the delegate themselves and their motivation, shall we say. But what we have designed in the process is that there's a weekly check-in between the learner and the leader. And this is done for about 15 to 20 minutes to basically make sure to maintain the cadence and also to give timely feedback on the progress. And the RPS evaluation form provides a standard to confirm that the steps have been followed correctly and sufficiently. And this can be used by the leader and the delegate. And at the end of that, there's then a report out for the delegate to share their learnings. And if you wish to see that, you can see, go to YouTube, and there's a guy there called Luke from Hologic who actually went through this process for steps 1 to 3. And you can see his report out from his RPS activity. So moving to level 4, the delegate develops their coaching and facilitation skills and then coaches up to 2 people through skill levels 1 to 3. So effectively, they're taking 2 other people through the same learning process that they've just been through. Again, the online course guides the coach through each of those steps of the learning process, also to become a better teacher and coach. And this includes facilitation tips when you're teaching, and also some of the coaching behaviors and typical questions to ask. So the proven outcome of the level 4 is that when the leader has developed the 2 other people through the skill levels 1 to 3 to become capable of solving an actual problem according to the evaluation criteria, and basically when they've reported out the results of their activities as well successfully. And again, you can see Luke, the same guy from Alogic, he's now progressing to teaching and coaching others independently without our support. So this then starts the cascade of self-reliant learning for problem solving within the organization.
Right, thanks, Dave. So here are some reflections. Pete showed you this slide earlier. Obviously, LTF is a really good way to think through your transformation. But what's obvious from looking at these 50 cases is not many people are thinking about all these dimensions individually, let alone as a system. It's no surprise that people struggle with implementation. 50 companies is a significant sample size. However, at the same time, we must remember that there is some bias in that sample. All of that sample contacted us either because they felt they needed to accelerate lean thinking and practice in their organization, or because previous efforts were not having the desired results. And we must remember this is a summary of 50 organizations' situation. It's not your situation, it's theirs. So there are patterns in this data. Look at the blue box, the horizontal blue box going across from senior management. Purpose is being worked on, but problem-solving capability can and actually must improve for traction in the other LTF dimensions, for those other LTF dimensions to take place. Leaders quite clearly don't look at the work. They try to look at the management system before deploying down. Is that a good thinking way? Probably not. More involvement may be required earlier to co-create systems and develop learning through doing. The one area that appears to be a blind spot is in capability development, as Pete explained earlier. That's the area in the red box. Traditional leaders or leaders that are trying to transition to use lean thinking haven't recognized it's their responsibility. In this sample, we don't buy the notion that leaders don't want to or even can't make this change. The reality is that some didn't even realize it was necessary, and others said they didn't know where to start or how to do it. So it's obvious that if you want lean thinking to be effective in your organization, then you must work on all 5 dimensions. Don't leap to the latest thing, the latest book, the latest hobby horse. Develop the activities to address your gaps across all 5 dimensions in parallel. So next slide, please, Luke. So what might we do differently? Obviously, capability development, as we just said, is a blind spot in this sample. How might we close the gaps identified? So as a next step, understand your current state. Think about what good would look like and the gaps that you have to close, both in relation to the individual dimension in the LTF, but also in the relationship of the dimensions with the other dimensions. There are 5 dimensions. You have to do some work on all of them. Then turn the common gaps into questions that encourage discussion about what we're trying to achieve. So often, particularly on LinkedIn, I see people being critical of lean, and they make blanket statements without thinking that the application is situational. It's okay to say improvement capabilities are not defined, but it's far more positive and useful to ask a question. Have we defined the capabilities we need? In effect, set a standard, set the expectations. If you haven't defined skill progression, turn it into a question. Think about the levels in the organization. Is there a learning and development process defined for the front line and the leader and the leadership levels? Is there a criteria for confirming capability specific to the work to be done? The better the thinking, the better the questions. You may well conclude that the current predominant way you're trying to introduce lean is fundamentally flawed. It's not learned by leaders who then teach, coach, and develop their people, and that your preoccupation with belts and certificates and the creation of lean practitioners has the underlying thinking of developing experts rather than developing problem-solving capability in everyone. So think about the certification programs and the competency systems and whether they fully answer any of these questions that are on this slide. I think you'll find that they don't. So that's where we are with our research. As I said, we're currently in the process of writing that up in several forms, some of it for the academic community, some for the practitioner community, and I hope you enjoyed the session. What questions do you have? You may have to help us, Luke, with this because I can't see any questions that have come up. So
Yeah, so if anybody's got any questions, if they could put it into the Q&A section. We actually do have one from Madhu Iyer. So if somebody wants to have a quick read, and hopefully we'll be able to answer it.
I can't see them actually.
Okay.
Oh,
well,
yes, I can. Wait a minute, it's in the more bit. Okay, right, got it.
Yeah. So Madhu asks, thank you for the insights into the transformation framework, especially on the focus.
Right, okay, so when will the VSM be available? After we've done the improvement activity one and the core leadership skills, that they took priority. So yeah, sorry about that. It's a bit late.
We've got some more coming in. So Scott Dakes also asks, love the posters. Thanks, Scott. How do you handle the initial feedback that they are too busy?
Go on, Pete. You can have a go at that one.
Yeah, I mean that versus about 6,000 PowerPoint slides is which is busier. But yes, it's a question we get. I think the thing is kind of getting leaders to do that initial training and use the poster. And once they've used it once, hopefully you agree, Scott. Then you find it a lot easier. Yeah. But yeah, we do get that because we're trying to put it all in one place and simplify the learning process. But you still got to try to put a complicated sort of teach point into one poster. But we kind of break that down, we explain it, and that's why it's got a guidebook. Hopefully, Scott, yeah, we can improve them all the time. But we've got a guidebook. It explains the images, and if we break it down, it's like anything. It makes it easier, I think.
I think once you go through it and explain it piecemeal, don't give them the fire hydrant of the whole poster in one go, but break it down. We've found that it's more palatable, and people come round and say, well, actually, yeah, that's not too bad. Actually, it was a bit busy at first, but now you've been through it, it's easy to understand.
Right, we've got a couple more questions. Oh, go on. Sorry, we've got a couple more.
I was just going to say, it's also you've got to interject the examples and context for that company. So give company examples or external examples if you haven't got any. And I think that helps with the teaching bit as well, doesn't it? So it's not just teaching the poster; it's putting it in a context and explaining it for your organisation.
Yeah. So Cecilia asked, how do you ensure the integration of 5 dimensions in real time?
Well, I think what you've got to do is you've got to think about these things as questions, and then when you've got the questions and you have then got the dialogue with the leadership team, then the leadership team have to then start reflecting on the questions and then start thinking about what for their situation is a good set of steps for closing the key gaps that they've got. And so I think that's where, in some cases there are obvious steps that should be done in a sequence. If you're in a situation that's highly unstable, you'd want to focus on things that actually create that stability before even moving on. Yeah. But I think the more that you can basically create the dialogue within the leadership team about what the trade-offs are and what the activities are, and get them to reflect, the more the chance of integrating and just making sure that you've got that you have actually started that discussion around all 5 dimensions.
All right, it's about alignment, isn't it? At the end of the day, it's getting the leadership team aligned and agreed on. You can't do everything. So what are the priorities and the biggest gaps we need to close first? But be mindful, we need to circle back and still address the other dimensions of the LTF.
Yeah, we have got a few more questions, but it looks like we are running out of time. I can see
we'll take them. We'll put them on our blog, and we'll do a little blog answers for people if that's helpful for them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks very much.
Well, we can see that Luke is on the dark side. He didn't open his camera during the session. It was just a voice there. Hello, Luke. So guys, thank you very much, and hope to see you soon. Now we'll continue here for the next session.